200 years after the bombs dropped all across the world in the Great War, creating the treacherous world of Fallout as we know it, a battle between two nation-states was taking place on the border of Arizona and Nevada, on the famous Hoover Dam. Caesar's legion, carrying the banner of the bull, crashed into the unprepared new California Republic who had taken up residency there. Caught with their pants down and with no hope of fortifying the landmark and strategic resource, the NCR retreated southwest to the town of Boulder City. Their victory and the dam in hand, the Legion pursued them under the leadership of the Malpais legate, hoping to turn their assured victory into a crushing, demoralizing defeat that would send the NCR running west back to California. What they didn't take into account is that while the NCR sharpshooters bought time by slowing the Legion down, General Lee Oliver of the NCR prepared a trap for the Legion. When the Legion arrived in Boulder City, the trap was sprung, and tons of C4 erupted around the main offensive force of the Legion, smashing their assault and breaking the organization of those that were left. The regrouped NCR plunged into the ruined city and crashed into the scattered remains of Caesar's army and cut them to pieces. The Legion was routed and the NCR retook control of the Hoover Dam, the only land route over the Colorado River, and it would be over 4 years until the Legion would have a chance of taking the dam again. This is where we start Fallout New Vegas as a single courier thrust into the spotlight of events outside of their control. The tensions between the Legion and the NCR are reaching a boiling point in the year 2281, and you, the player, are apparently the only person who can decide its fate. Each army is one man short of winning the Battle of Hoover Dam, and that person is you, the human atom bomb. Anyway, the course of the game takes place, and at its climax, you can choose to help the Legion or the NCR, and as an aside, you or Mr. House can establish New Vegas as an independent nation state of its own in control of the dam. In either case, the battle for the dam must happen, and it must have a victor. Too bad it doesn't matter who wins. Let me explain. Throughout all of Fallout New Vegas, you're just one person going through the trials and tribulations that one person goes through. The entire game is framed around the importance of the Hoover Dam, and the game ends when the battle's over. It's the primary conflict of the title, and with its resolution, the game ends and you can breathe a sigh of relief and feel accomplished. The battle feels huge to you, and it should, since, you know, the fate of the battle weighs entirely on your shoulders. But in reality, the Hoover Dam is nothing. Well, that's not quite true. It's definitely something. It's a symbol and a legitimate strategic resource that provides electricity and controls land access across the Colorado River Basin, one of the few ways to cross from Arizona into Nevada and vice versa, and the immediate control of eastern Nevada and western Arizona hinges on who controls that dam. But it doesn't matter in the end, because while the dam and the battle to control it is strategically significant and takes great sacrifice, preparation, and devotion of resources to acquire, it is ultimately just one small piece of a very, very large puzzle that, when put together, comprises the entire southwestern United States, upon which the war for the soul of humanity is fought, of which there can be only one person who wins. And if you look close enough, you realize the victor is obvious. With the crushing defeat of the Legion at the hands of the new California Republic during the first battle of the Hoover Dam, Caesar learned the hard way that the NCR wasn't a foe that he could take out with a straightforward battle, and his tactics, executed by Legate Lennius and Wolpes Inculta, embodied a new strategy: disruption of morale and guerrilla warfare. When you have a strong enemy, you strike them where they're weak with what you can, maximizing their casualties and emotional distress while minimizing your own, disorienting and even decapitating their leadership, and forcing your large enemy to divide their forces. All of these things are tactics that the Legion executes with aplomb, with its multiple established fronts at Nelson and Cottonwood Cove, and its campaigns of terrorism at Camp Searchlight, Ranger Station Charlie, Nipton, the attempted assassination of President Kimball, and its excursions into the Long 15 before the creation of the Divide, all of which were specifically designed to target the weak points of a much larger enemy, exploiting their vulnerabilities, confusing their generals, and spreading them out so they are less threatening. Say what you will about the morals and ethics of the Legion, in the time leading up to the second battle of Hoover Dam, their tactics and wartime acumen are second to none. The NCR, by contrast, is stretched thin. The Mojave is the wild frontier of their territory, and they have a weak grasp at best over the area. They're demoralized, understaffed, and far from their home. Most troops in the area have no sense of purpose and are stressed by the possibility of waking up any day to a surprise attack from the Legion. Their outlook is grim, and even more grim should the courier side with the Legion and facilitate the death of President Kimball. But even if Kimball survives, that doesn't mean much. The Legion is at their throats, banging down their door, and support for Kimball is waning. While his war-hawkish leadership philosophy is what originally won him the support of the NCR, his dogged pursuit of claiming the Mojave is wearing both his men on the ground and his support back home thin. The continuation of Kimball's presidency hinges on securing the Mojave, and even if he does, it's not clear that the benefits will become obvious soon enough to keep him from being voted out, if he isn't killed in the events of New Vegas. So in the war between the Legion and the NCR, the victor at the end of the day is clear. It's the new California Republic. I mentioned earlier that the Hoover Dam is one piece of a large puzzle, a puzzle that spans the entire southwestern United States. It's the climax of the plot of Fallout New Vegas, but that's just a snapshot, an instance in time of what is a years-long war fought on multiple fronts across the entire Southwest. The Second Battle of Hoover Dam is where the story of Fallout New Vegas ends, but it's just the beginning of years and years of dogged fighting across Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Oregon, and California. And a lot can happen in a war that spans years. The Legion is able to press the advantage in the Mojave because the NCR is overextended and demoralized, and in the event that they win the Second Battle of the Hoover Dam, it's due to the ability to overwhelm the NCR by cutting off their retreat and removing their biggest advantage from the table: their improved technology. However, the NCR isn't staffed with incompetent military leaders, and the further west the Legion pushes, the deeper and deeper into NCR territory they're going to get, and more of their advantages will multiply, and more of the Legion's strengths will wane. Ultimately, the defeat of the Legion at the hands of the NCR becomes inevitable due to these three key factors: overexpansion, inferior technology, and bad administration. The Legion is modeled after the Roman Empire, specifically under the leadership of Julius Caesar. The most important aspect of the Roman Empire the Legion adopts is the incorporation of conquered tribes into its military ranks and erasing their cultural identity. This was most successfully done by the Roman Empire over generations, so that even people living in fringe territories of the Roman Empire thought of themselves as Roman. Caesar's Legion, however, has been around for only a few decades, and most people in the ranks still remember the tribes they came from. This places the cultural identity in jeopardy, especially since as the Legion travels further west, there are less and less independent tribes to incorporate into their ranks. The territories they claim will be more difficult to hold, and their forces will become spread out. Effectively, the exact same problem the NCR had when it reached for the Mojave will become the Legion's issue. But perhaps more importantly, the NCR has technology and isn't afraid to use it. Even bigger, they have the means of producing this technology. The NCR, while perhaps somewhat inefficient at mobilizing due to its bureaucracy, corruption, and pesky rights, has thrived in adopting the industrial innovation of the past, and unlike the Ludical Legion, has no qualms using guns, chems, and vertibirds. The Legion will use guns if they must, but the eager adoption of this tech by the NCR means they are better trained in their use and maintenance, and the production of these weapons fresh by organizations like the Gunrunners means that they'll never be in short supply. Adoption of wartime technology improves unit efficiency and mobility, and the further west the Legion presses, the shorter the NCR supply lines to the front line get. The further west they go, the harder they'll get hit in the nose. But this could all be circumvented with clever tactics and time, which is the ultimate enemy of the Legion: the ticking of the clock. You see, the Legion under Caesar doesn't resemble Rome at its height as much as Edward Sallow would like to believe that it does. Rather, it resembles Rome at its collapse, overextended by war and conquest and forced by the desperation of fighting a superior enemy into having people from different tribes and identities in its rank. This isn't too important in the events of New Vegas, as the men are held together by loyalty and fear to Caesar and their commanders. But someday, eventually, Caesar will die, either from the brain tumor in his head going untreated, from assassination, an accident, or just the slow marching of time. The wasteland is a rough place, and Caesar isn't a spring chicken. Eventually, he'll die. How long would it be for the disparate leaders of the Legion to start fighting for control of the Empire like the Roman generals did in the 3rd and 4th centuries in our real world? How long before the tribes that had existed merely years ago start to want to recover their identities? Even if the fierce Linnaeus can keep the majority of the army under his banner using fear, he's a poor politician and has a complete disregard for lateral thinking. There's no leadership contingency in the Legion, and that is its biggest downfall. That is what keeps it from being a nation that will stand the test of time and instead relegates it into a glorified camp of raiders who like to play dress up. The NCR, even should Kimball die or get deposed, is more than prepared to replace him. The weakness of its democratic republic is inefficiency, but its strength is adaptability. You can cut off the head, but 2 more will grow back because its core identity isn't tied to its leadership, rather its leadership is dependent on the government's principles. They have contingencies, they have tactics, they have numbers, and they have technology. They may not be the power that will rule the entire United States, but the NCR's reign over the American Southwest will remain unchallenged once Caesar dies, the Legion is fractured, and becomes unable to form a cohesive front against Eastern expansion. Because of bad administrative planning and philosophical hangups, the Legion is doomed. All the NCR has to do is wait. Thank you everyone for watching my video about the war between the NCR and the Imperial Legion. If this does well, this is a mini-series I'd like to kind of explore more. A lot of video games will present a conflict on a kind of epic scale and kind of present war as if it hinges upon one battle and everything's over immediately, when the reality is not quite that simple. And I'd like to go into games and see and explore the wartime tactics and the politics surrounding the different conflicts and extend them to their logical conclusion. I'd like to do this with The Witcher and Skyrim and some others if it does well. So if you have any other games you'd like to know about, any game conflicts you'd like to have explored, let me know down below. Yeah, and tell me what you think. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think the NCR wouldn't win? Tell me your thoughts on the matter. Am I just American-centric because the NCR is kind of like America, or am I right? We'll see. I guess we'll never see. But you let me know. NCR Legion, tell me.